This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rod Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hey, this is Brant Menswar, and you are listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. Thank you for downloading. Please leave a rating and a review wherever you get your podcast from. It helps me scale the show. It helps me get this out to those who may need to hear it the most. Also, check me out, treydowns.com, and send me a message. Let me know how you guys are making out. I'm like in a weird spot right now. I just got done watching Avatar, the movie. I haven't seen that in forever, ages. It's been so long. I just got done watching it with my son, and I just feel like we are just so asleep. Like, I don't even know how to put it. Like, we are just asleep to things that are so more important in this world. I feel like it's almost like the allegory of the cave. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about with that. I think it's Plato. Allegory of the cave. Search that, Google that, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. But I think we're just so asleep to the more important and the bigger picture, and it's very sad. I think, I don't know, I just feel like we need to awaken. I think we need to be more conscious about what our true meaning is here. Think about this, right? Like, think about the world that we live in, our bodies, the cells that are in inside of our bodies that are automatically distributing life. They're living on their own. We don't even know that they're there. I mean, we're doing the same thing here in society and reality. We're just going along our lives, reproducing, living our lives, producing pollution, producing tragedy, suffering, happiness, love, all of this stuff automatically. And Mother Earth doesn't even know. I mean, she probably does know, but it's all happening right now. And we don't even take the time to appreciate the things that are going on right now in the world. We don't ever take the time. When's the last time you watched a sunset or a sunrise and just thought about the perfections of that, the colors, the things that have to happen for that to even manifest in your reality? Like, we're spinning in space on this huge Mother Earth, and we think that the world revolves around us and that we have all these goals that we want to achieve and success, and we think this is success, and we think that's success, and we think that we need to be perfect, and in our perfection we think that we are all that there is. And I don't know, I needed to see that movie because I needed to, and I hate to say this, but I know that I'll go back to sleep at some point, and I'll forget about this, and I'll forget about this inspiration, and I'll forget about this motivational moment, and you will too, and you'll think that I'm ranting here, but like, when's the last time you actually went out and observed nature and like appreciated a tree or a plant and looked at it and saw the beauty in it and the perfection in the soil and how nature goes on without us, and how small we are, and how we take things without asking, we take things without appreciation. We look at our phones all the time. We get on social media and we think that is the way of the world. That is the new way. And we think how important that is in our lives. We think about the stock market and how we need to make money, and that money is the thing that is going to make us happy, when all you need to do is go outside and go for a walk and enjoy the beauty that is nature, because we are from that source, we are from that energy, and we connect with it, and we are from that intelligence, and we are mixed with it, and it can read us, and we can feel it. But yet we think that we're so above it. It's just sad. I don't mean to start your day off in a wretched mood. I just want you to awaken to that fact, to awaken to the things we don't take care of. and how simple it is that we can get out and reconnect with our energy source and with what we're a part of, that consciousness, that universal consciousness, with Mother Earth and God, and be a part of it. It's that simple. But yet we're asleep. I am inspired right now, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy to present this conversation that I have today with Charley Castex. He is a very talented spiritual guide, and he had profound spiritual insights at the age of 10. And in 19, he received an intuitive direction and inspiration from an apprenticeship with a medicine man and author Sun Bear. And in his early 20s, he crossed paths with a soy holy man called Sparrow Eagle, who ordained him into his Native American charity ministry. And Charley also has been honored as one of the top 50 psychics in the USA. And his new book that is coming out, you definitely need to pick up. You definitely need to pick up. And I'm blanking on the name of it right now. It's the name of this episode. But I'm just in that zone right now of just awe for sure. I think it's increasing your bandwidth. You're strengthening your spiritual bandwidth. Or expand your spiritual bandwidth. I'm pretty sure it's probably that. Let me just Google that real quick because I want to expand your spiritual bandwidth. And Charley, I apologize. I have your notes around here somewhere. I just literally got done watching that movie and I had to come in here and I needed to rant for a minute. But just to give you that type of, fire you up before this episode, here's a little bit more of that ammunition. Here's a preview of the episode.
Manifestation. The one thing that I see missing a lot for people is they hammer it. Like they use masculine energy, which is great. That's what we have, is that yang energy, and it's fantastic. But it needs to be balanced. See, just like everything in nature, it strikes a balance, just like all of the ancient Asian religious tradition suggests. So most people are picking up the hammer and they end up splitting the board instead of just driving the nail. And what I'm saying is you still have to aim for the nail, but there's a correct pressure. And there's a way we can get more ninja at this, where we can use just the right amount of energy and the right amount of focus and not go overboard. Now, with manifestation, the feminine energy should follow the intention and the emotionality, which is to say surrender. And that's where most people miss it. And I used to do it too, where you white knuckle it and you go, yeah, if I just think hard enough, if I just try to drive this thing. But nature doesn't work that way. It works in a balance. So the idea is you do everything you can, and then you have to be, I believe, satisfied with your efforts. You feel even greater fulfillment, more gratitude, more elevated emotions, and then you start to...
Wow, I mean, that's pretty deep. I agree with Charley on all of that. I don't allow myself to feel that balance. It's always go, 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 aggressive, 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 white knuckle, white knuckle, white knuckle. It's never surrender and allow. It's never being fulfilled with the work and allowing the universe to take in that positive energy or even energy that I'm producing and allow it to manifest whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve. And then again, it's, well, what am I trying to achieve? What is it really? I mean, it's this life. I mean, you could seriously just look out the window wherever you're at right now and see life for what it is. It is just this perfection state. It is this beingness that we ignore most of the time because we believe that there is something that we're here higher to create, and it is actually the perfection in it that is what we're here to be a part of, the movement of all of this creation, this wonderment, that isn't even a word, this state of being, the movement of everything. Think about where you're at right now and the things that are going on around you that you're not even conscious of. And we're a part of that. And we're always so busy trying to force things, crushing our goals. Like, who are we to create goals? I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, yeah, when we're asleep and we're in the mindset of I, the small I, we think that there are these goals that we're going to create and that we're going to achieve to succeed. This, like, this huge game plan that's going to end suffering. And it's the participation in the thing that you're doing is what is actually helping the suffering. It is what you're doing to prepare for that goal. It is the thing that you're doing that is helping yourself to get there, that is helping with the suffering. It is you that is staying up late and studying hard for that test, or working long hours to get a promotion. It's the work that you put in when you don't think that you're doing the thing. Or if it's you that are just going for a run or going for a walk in the woods or in a path, and you're taking it in, that energy, and you're giving it right back. It is that. It is that is helping the suffering. It is this right here, this conversation that I'm having, that is, it's not the goal, it's the effort. It's the building up of this energy, and we release it into the world and in the universe, and that's what helps consciousness rise. Yeah, that's just part of the conversation. That's just part of the process of helping man with the suffering. That is helping with it. And everything else just falls into its place, and everything else is just perfection. But we don't see the perfection because we're just so tied up with our smaller self that we think that we need to be a part of that. And that if we're not, then that is not how our lives are supposed to unfold. And oh man, I'm just, go see Avatar. I mean, I don't know. Go watch it. Go rewatch it for yourselves. I can't even believe it's 12 minutes right now into this episode, and we haven't even aired anything yet. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the great and powerful Charley Castex.
Hi, I'm Charley Castex, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Charley, my man, thank you so much for joining the show. I cannot wait.
My pleasure, Trey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I found you through Marion Bohr's book, The Gift Within Us. And this is a book about, mysticism, spirituality, psychics, gifts that we have inside of us. And I found your story, and it was very intriguing. Like, I really enjoyed your section of the book.
Okay. Appreciate that.
I'm really interested in hearing about the younger years, right, of you growing up. And when did you start realizing that you had these innate abilities to, kind of see things that people didn't normally see?
Right. Sure. Well, it's like most people who are in the intuitive arts or in the spiritual, what I think of as soul craft. We're kind of like fish swimming in the sea. So we feel like our experiences are normal, and they're not unusual, they're not extraordinary necessarily. But for me, I was fortunate to be drawn at a very early age. During my single digits, when I was an altar boy, I was very connected to the mysticism of the church, interestingly enough. And the silence, the sense, the smells, the intrigue of the idea of connecting with source, and even the ceremony and all of the formalities of the church I found kind of interesting. And my earliest aspirations were to be either a priest or a scientist.
That's
What?
That's way off. Like both of them.
Aspirations there. Yeah. On one hand, I really loved animals and was interested in being a herpetologist, which is a reptile doctor, when I was about 7 years old. And I was having a pretty heavy existential conflict in terms of feeling like I had to choose my profession at that age. So I imagine that is a bit unusual. So I'd have the Guinness Book of World Records under one arm and maybe the New Testament, the Christian Testament under the other, and there I'd go. But I found that I was drawn initially to spirituality through Christianity and Catholicism, and then it kind of branched off from there. I found that, especially in my dreams, I was having a lot of incredible experiences, and essentially, I was able to tap into information for people around me by being present, being attentive, and being open to the messages of the unconscious. So it started early for me. And then when I was a teenager, I was very blessed to have the beginning of a dual apprenticeship with 2 different Native American elders. So these were heavy duty medicine men. One was named Sun Bear. When I was 19, I started a 4-year apprenticeship. And then some years later, actually 4 years later, I met Richard Sparrow Eagle, who is what I consider a Lakota holy man, and had a 5-year apprenticeship with him. And in both of those apprenticeships, the objective wasn't to become a medicine man or a Indian spiritual leader so much as just to absorb the traditions and absorb the depth of the spiritual quest. So started very young with a lot of questioning, and then later on with a lot of investigation.
Man, Charley, I'm so curious right now. How do you go from altar boy to studying under medicine man? Like what in there even intrigued you, or what event like triggered that ball in motion? Like how did you get there?
Okay, as far as the connection with
like, so you go to altar boy, right? So I'm thinking, all right, so you're Catholic, and you're very, you seem very kind of conscious to the religious kind of vibe, and next thing you know, I'm assuming that you start picking up on your intuitive abilities, and you start figuring out that you have this gift.
Right.
Fill in that gap between when you recognize, first off, when did you recognize your gift, and then how that lead you to medicine man?
Okay, great. Well, essentially, the short story is that I recognized I could pick up on information for people around me. I could perceive aspects of.
Does that like pop out to you? Like people?
Yeah, they pop out to me. I would be able to pick up the fact of that my friends' parents were going through struggles or troubles, or I'd know that there was going to be a test, a surprise quiz tomorrow, or I'd be able to pick up on information without really knowing people. I sense their background, or sense their trauma, or sense their potentials, which is even a greater thing, to sense they're speaking of your superior self. I'm very logged on to the idea of human potential. And so that fascination and that interest in human potential, starting so early with more of a kind of mystical spiritual aspiration, was one thing, as you suggest. And then there was this tangential leap that occurred when my eldest sister had read a book by this Native American medicine man named Sun Bear, The Path of Power. And she found it very intriguing. And when she mentioned the title to me, the hair on my arm stood up, and I took notice. So I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And I felt so drawn to it. I read this book, and I kept rereading it. It took me about 1.5 years to read it, because I'd get halfway through and I'd feel like I was reading a postcard from the future. I mean, really just basically stimulated that internal instinct that was giving me this high sign that there's some connective link with my destiny here. And right around that time, Joanne said, oh, they have an apprenticeship program. So my sister actually went to a 10-day screening with Sunbear to find out if she could be an apprentice with him. And so I just kind of did the monkey see, monkey do routine, but I was really fervent and really, really excited because I had the sense that was going to be my launching pad.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever struggle with, like, being Christian, being a Catholic, and having these abilities? Like, did you think that, like, that this was bad, or did you ever think, like, this is something that I need to, like, I don't know, keep an eye on? Is it true? Like, is this something that is, what is going on? Did you ever have that type of, like, mindset or contemplate that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thankfully, I've always had this kind of rebellious sense that religion serves such a great function, but essentially I was more interested in more of a DIY approach of really going as close to the source or close to the source of information as I could. So when I was a little guy, sure, I was an altar boy, but I was also enacting masses in my room by myself, which was strange behavior, for a little guy. And but again, something inherent within me was calling out for a mystical connection with my source. So I never looked at my abilities as anything that was in conflict with Christian or Catholic doctrine, because I took the Bible, at least at that point, a bit literally in the sense of Jesus's admonition of saying, well, greater things than this ye shall do. And of course, the prophets from the Bible are numerous. And I felt like that this aspect of sixth sense, which is really an attenuation of the five senses that we have, if we attenuate those five senses to a great degree, the sixth sense rises to the surface. But we can also disconnect from those five senses and internalize our energy, and then we'll be able to connect with that intuition as well. So I never felt like there was a conflict with it. And thankfully, it never really occurred to me in a dogmatic way that there was something non-kosher about what I was pursuing. And especially around the time I started getting interested in the tarot, and that was a real game changer for me. And I ended up becoming a cartomancer. And these days I read with 3 different decks and 3 different systems of cards. And that's a whole
What is that? Like, I'm not familiar with that. What is that?
Sure. Well, cartomancy is a form of divination.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be working with cards to gain insight and guidance spiritually. So I come mainly from my clairvoyance in terms of how I read somebody. The information is mainly from what I'm sensing, what I'm perceiving, and what I'm receiving. But now the cards, Tarot, Lenormand, even the regular playing cards, which predate the Tarot significantly, all the way back to the 9th century in China, all have inherent symbolic meaning that connects with cross-cultural, with universal spiritual symbology. Everything from the Kabbalah to astrology to numerology, pretty much across the board, the cards have references to numerous divinatory sciences. So reading cards as in for divination, for higher guidance, as an instrument for perception, basically a focal point for perception, although there is an academic basis that exists with the cards.
Does that help you? Or, like, all right, so when you started out, when you were first, started doing this as a profession, when you doubled down on the gift and you wanted to pursue this, did you use that method, or did you just kind of like, I don't, all right, so when I imagine psychics or intuitive, what is it? How do you say it? Intuitives? Intuitive, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you guys are like, when you first start out, you're like feeling your powers or your sixth sense, like you were talking about, like you're just growing into that.
Right.
When you started out, like, I feel like you were growing into that, right? Like, you're just kind of like, didn't know, like, obviously it's like that Spider-Man quote with, like, great power comes with great responsibility. Like, you don't really know how to like point this power in the right direction. So, and I imagine like you had some doubt, right? Like, what am I, like,
oh, definitely.
is this, it's like you sit down and you do a reading with somebody, you're like, I'm getting this sense of like this, and that. And it's like, you got to have some kind of doubt in your mind. Like,
definitely.
like,
Yeah.
talk
See,
about that.
yeah, that's a great point, Troy. It really is, because I never had any doubt about, let's say, the divine nature of guidance, that this is an aspect of the soul, that this is an organic human potential that I believe most people have. I was never felt like there was anything that was non-spiritual or non-noble about it. So the dogmatic aspect, or seeing psychic ability or intuitive ability and kind of in a dark light, never occurred to me. But in actual practice, the doubt that happens in terms of when you start to read for people, especially when, as you're suggesting, when you're professional and there's people are showing up.
Yeah,
and
they're paying you money, right?
And they're booking, and they're just, and they're very heavily invested in receiving some guidance. Sure, there's doubt. In fact, in my track, in my route, I can say that it's pretty funny, because it was about the first 500 readings that I did. I could track it. Now, 500 readings for a lot of readers is a career. That's a career. That would be
is that a year? Is that even like a year worth of readings? Like,
it's a good question. I mean, it depends on what year. When I started off, I was reading 6 to 8 people a day for about 6 days a week.
Shoo.
So I really came out of the starting gate fast.
Yeah.
I was in my early 20s. Yeah. And sure, I had doubt, and the doubt originated not exactly from insecurity so much as just a weighted sense of responsibility, because the last thing I wanted to be was an ill advisor. I mean, what if I tell somebody, I give them a prediction and it works against them, or it's inaccurate, or it's non-beneficial? That's what concerned me, is I was just feeling very weighted with the prospect of being the advisor and being in that position of responsibility. So what I found was, during that 500 readings or so, I just kept working through it. I kept working through the nervousness and kind of sweating through the readings. And there was a point where I felt my internal guidance say to me, it said, look, you can either do this and help multitudes of people and enjoy it, and you just accept it as your gift in life, as your grace in life, or you can go bonkers, and you get to choose. And that was what came to me, and it was a defining moment. And sure, it took me a minute to wrap my head and heart around that, but once I did, I went for it. And I found that right around that 500 mark, I just decided, well, if I put my total self forward, I feel like divinity is going to meet me halfway. And even with my students now, because I mentor people globally, especially the intuitive students, I tell them, you don't have to strive for perfection. You just have to strive for sincerity, and be as focused as you can be, and do your very best job. And that's all you can do. So, I think that most professional psychics that are working and helping people and are full-time professional, they have a better batting average. Like, it's better than a 300 batting average, let's say.
Sure.
Yeah.
So is that like that batting average? Is that like predictions? How do you gauge it? Like, what is a hit? You know what I mean? Like, what is that?
Right. It's like, that's another good question. It's sure, some of it's prediction based, but I don't really work essentially by a prediction model. This is not about prediction so much as it is a type of sixth sense counseling. Instead of laying on the couch and you tell me what's going on, or tell me your conflicts and your dilemmas, I let you know what I'm seeing, and then you match that with your sense of reality. You weigh it with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a hit is. If I say to you, this is what I see in terms of your past, this is what I'm feeling in terms of your present, this is what I feel you're interested in, this is what the dynamic has been in relationship, for instance, and you would know, you'd say, oh, okay, that makes sense, that's a hit. So a hit would just be a clear perception that is either revelatory or supportive or insightful, that can immediately be recognized. Now, and it can be argued that it's not always immediately recognized, because if we're dealing with future information, sometimes it takes months, if not years, for that guidance to unfurl.
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know, I've had this hypothesis for a little bit, like right since like my development and my learning and my openness to spirituality. I feel like, with quantum physics and quantum reality, I feel like, we are on this straight line from A to B, right? A is birth, B is death. And we're like on this straight line, but because we perceive time as this linear thing that is very slow and low frequent, where we live on this plane, that psychics and people with your ability can see down that line.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like our futures are what they are. They're happening, on a different plane, instantaneous, like right now, like our future, everything's happening right now.
Right.
But because we live on this plane that is very low frequency and slow, it's like that line, that entire lifespan from A to B is perceived very slow, linear from 1 year to the next. And it's like, you can't see the future because obviously it's so slow. It might not make sense to a lot of people listening, but it's like, if you kind of study quantum physics, or you think about that in terms of theory of relativity, it's like, that's just my hypothesis. Like, where you guys have this extreme gift to be able to pop your head up and see down that line and say, this is what I see in the future. Like 12 months from now, you're going to experience this. But because of free choice, free will, there's also other factors that happen in the moment that could change that game. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you can see things that could possibly come up that could be represented as a hit, but also what people don't understand is that there is free will, and there's also other factors playing in where our thoughts come into like, if you tell me something right now, like, something that would happen to me in the future, and I'm thinking about that, I can either doubt that, right? Like, I can doubt that it's ever going to happen, and that's my choice to deny that, and it won't ever happen because I have that free choice, that free will. Or I can kind of be like, look at it as like an intellectual kind of, I don't want to say cynic, but like skepticism, right? And say, all right, we'll just see, and I'll give it the option. I'll say, all right, you know what? We'll just see, wait and see, and then it might happen if I'm open to it. And I think a lot of people are either, but I might be wrong, Charlie, but I think a lot of people are like all in on this. Like, they just believe everything you say, or they're like the other opposite end of trying to come in and saying, Charlie, you're totally wrong, bro. Like, this is totally wrong, right? Like, I don't know. I could be wrong, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, I like how you connected to the quantum model with intuition, because I mean, taking time out of a linear context, as you're suggesting, is a high-minded concept, but it's also supported by all the data in terms of the quantum models and quantum physics. Time is looked at in a more concentric fashion than it is as a straight line. But as you branched off from there, well, yeah, interesting. It's like, I think that most people that I encounter are somewhere in between in a very good way. Like, I look at a cynic as somebody who really has just dismissed the whole subject out of hand. And I look at a skeptic as somebody who's very intelligent, who's inquisitive. And I think that no matter how open my clients are, they should have not necessarily skepticism, but sort of a reserve to make sure that they feel like it's really connecting and that it's adding up for them. Mm-hmm. Just like anything,
Yeah.
Just like any skill, you want to make sure that there's competence behind it, and that there is a benefit that's delivered. So I don't really encounter skeptics in terms of people having a prove it to me attitude, which is great. Because,
good. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'm somewhere around between probably about 55 to 60,000 readings that I've done.
Oh my God, dude.
A lot of readings. And I can count on maybe, well, just about both hands of how many people were truly skeptical. And the interesting thing is that the skeptics are usually, it's kind of a paradox of sorts, because they're usually so easily impressed. That's the funny thing, is I can tell somebody who comes in, they're like, well, prove it to me, and I'll say, look, I'm not going to prove, I'm not in the business of proving anything to anybody, but I'll start. And if you want more, tell me. And usually after a few minutes, they're so effusive and they're so reactive and they're so emotional about their sense of feeling the accuracy of the experience, let's say, that it's pretty dramatic. Whereas most clients will come in and they're expecting accuracy, but not in a kind of smug way. They're just open but yet they're expecting, and I think that's kind of a healthy skepticism that they want to take away.
Sure.
So, and I do too, even though it's a totally organic process. I have no idea what I'm going to say when I open my mouth.
Really?
So, oh yeah.
How do you prepare yourself like that when you get down with the client?
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's just the preparation is everything in terms of making sure that I'm as out of the way as possible. Which may sound strange in some respects. I'm fully present in terms of my attention and a very relaxed brainwave state. I'm kind of into brainwave state and that kind of stuff. So I'm generally in
brainwave state. Man, you're speaking my language today.
Yeah, right. So more of an alpha state, versus
okay.
Somebody comes in and kind of a mid to high beta brainwave state. Usually when they see me and we just start, they're already relaxing. And then I start with what I'm seeing. Its preparation is usually about a half an hour for every 3 or 4 readings that I do. And the preparation involves meditation and intention. And other than that, it's completely improvisational, like comedy, acting.
So you just see images and then kind of repeat that?
Great point. I do. As a clairvoyant, I see images, and those images are very curious because it's like they present this kind of psychic charades. Yeah, I have a vocabulary of a lot of images that stand out to me. Like a headline or a newsreel is an obvious one. And I might see dollar signs. I might see a real estate sign. Okay, and know somebody's house is for sale. I see license plates with different states on them. But then there's also metaphors that will show up, and I'll say I'll see the Incredible Hulk, and I'll think, okay, and it's a game of association, not too different than, say, a Rorschach test, but it's more internalized. And I say, okay, well, rage might be the first association. Now am I feeling rage empathically? Am I feeling a Jekyll Hyde kind of component, or somebody that has combustion internally? So it's very driven by images. It's driven by sensations and feelings. And it's really not that different than the organic sense of a mother knowing what's going on with her child when her daughter's off at college 2,000 miles away, and she has the sense of what she's having for dinner or who she's just talked to on the phone. So we have a ability to receive information that's beyond our senses, and that really is the nature of intuition.
That's beautiful. I love that. I never, an intuition of a mother with a kid away from college. What's your batting average? What do you think it is?
It's natural. I think it's nature's GPS. I think that we all have this ability. Now, the question is, more or less, it's this, which is, are we listening? Because the act of receiving guidance begins with listening for it. Most people are running right past themselves, and generally to either they have their heads in the rearview mirror and they're very obsessed with their past in terms of thought and emotion, or they're anxious about their future. So as trite as it sounds, there is a reason that be here now maxim or
that's hard.
General guideline has been around forever. Because when we're in the present moment, we're thinking less and feeling more. Mm-hmm. You ever notice that there's a certain, speaking of brainwave states, if we get hyper analytical or top heavy, I like to call it, then we lose coherence in terms of our minds, our brains. We become less ordered, we become less articulate. And that's what happens when we live by stress hormones, when we live in a heightened state of survival and a heightened state of emergency. So, of course, that's probably a whole other show for you to talk.
Yeah, that's a whole different podcast. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Living in that fight or flight response all the time. I mean, we do it all the time, right? Like we don't run from the tiger anymore. We kind of we got the social anxieties now that that is, stressing us out all the time. And that's how we create disease. That's how we age horribly. It's just all that, the cortisol that's released from us, right? Like it's just
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
tearing our bodies up. And meditation is, it's been key for me. Like, really trying to go inside. And that's what you said in the book that I found you in. You said you said that heaven is inside each one of us. Right. What did you mean by that?
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, heaven, not in the sense of attaching a heavy connotation to it, like a religious label or a specific locality. I'm talking about the non-local sense of experiencing bliss and experiencing a peace that's native. I call it original bliss. And I feel like we're born with this. We're born with the instinct to play. We're born with boundless energy to play. That's really our prime directive as children. And we come in and nobody needs to teach us how to play. They might have to teach us how to tie our shoes or how to ride a skateboard.
Or eat or hunt or anything like that. Yeah.
Exactly. But the play instinct is so inherent and so natural. And I think there's an incredible dovetail between wanting to play and finding peace. And when I said the heaven is within us, I'm saying that basically we're not separate from our source. And that's not a new idea.
You mean God or consciousness, right. The oneness.
Oneness. All of those labels I think apply. In terms of pointing the finger at the absolute, I look at this aspect of divinity as the permanence that has created the temporality, that creates temporality. It's a permanent absolute that has enfolded itself around temporality or created a sense of temporality or three-dimensional life, as you referenced earlier. So we're basically spirits within a body. And because we are an animal within an angel, let's say.
An animal within an angel.
Yeah, we tend to orient all of our attention goes outward through our senses.
Yeah.
We externalize our focus so much that we end up thinking that we are our thoughts, that we are our feelings, instead of the correct understanding, which is, you ever realize that which observes the thought is not the thought? So when I'm saying that the heaven is within us, I'm saying there is a baseline experience of divinity that's within us that we came in with and we'll leave with, and it's self-regulating and it's self-fulfilling. It informs us as to what's authentic, as to what's real. It spurs us on. In many ways, I think it mirrors the function of the conscience.
Yeah.
Or is routed through the conscience. Is one way to think of it.
Wow.
So hopefully that answers some of that for you.
No, I love every bit of that. Do you write about that in your book, your new book that's out?
I do.
Expand your spiritual bandwidth, which I love, by the way.
Expand your spiritual bandwidth. Exactly. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's actually a book of strategies. So it's a series of 14 different strategies that relate to expanding the spiritual bandwidth, which is essentially increasing our ability to receive and perceive information. And that information is consciousness. That information is a expanded sense of life. When we perceive more life, we're having a richer life, right? If you increased your eyesight or you increased your hearing, you'd have a richer palette of experience. So in that same sense, expanding the spiritual bandwidth is being able to vastly attenuate ourselves, to really get clear at being able to connect at will. And it does help, as we were talking about the stress hormones before, it really helps to be able to dial all that down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Think about this, right? And this goes along with what you're saying. So without consciousness, what are we? We're just a body, right? The brain is just another organ, right? Without consciousness, there is no mind. There is no us functioning. Like there is, consciousness doesn't originate in the brain whatsoever. I believe that it works hand in hand with the brain. I feel like consciousness is everything, everywhere, and we vibrate with that consciousness. And the brain, this is just my hypothesis. I don't have any science to back this. However, there is some type of science that says there are microtubules around our brain cells that vibrate with the quantum realm. They vibrate together. So the consciousness and the brain work hand in hand. Without consciousness, the brain is just an organ. It does not. When you are dead, when the consciousness leaves your body, the brain is just an organ. When consciousness is there and you're alive, they work together. There is the mind. The mind is the brain and consciousness active together.
Right.
I'm right there with you, man. Like I read a couple of your chapters in your book, and I feel you 100%. Like I just feel like we're on the same wavelength. My mission is to help other people become more aware to that, like become more aware of the divinity that is inside of us, like that divinity that you talk about, that heaven and being inside of us, that we are from the oneness, that we are from God, part of that. Like I believe that. I mean, you look around at the world, you look where you're at, right? You're down in North Carolina. You look at the mountains, you look at the leaves, you look at the trees, you look at the grass, you look at everything that God has made, and you look how perfect it is. And then you look at us, right? Like the perfection in us, like all the way down from the micro of it all, like the cells, the unconsciousness that is in our body, the autoimmune system that operates without our consciousness. Like we're talking, you and I, and our bodies are producing cells, new cells. In 11 months, we're going to be totally different than what we are today. Like DNA is going to be different than in 11 months than what we are today. That is powerful. People become so, I just feel this sadness for people, because it's like we just become so limited in our belief systems. Like you were talking about with the dogmas of religion. Like don't get me wrong. Like I believe there's a God. I believe that there was a Jesus, but his message has been misconstrued greatly. I feel as if though a lot of us have that heaven inside of us. I feel like they were all intuitives, but we get blocked by all the noise that's out there in the world. I feel like we are a part of the oneness, and I feel like people need to hear this.
Absolutely.
And your book, I feel like, will help a lot of people become more aware. Now, did you kind of see the book, with your gift? What sparked the inspiration for this?
Great. Well, what sparked the inspiration for it was recognizing that people have such a yearning, and you were just, I think, speaking to this point, which is, there is such a need, there's such a yearning that people have for contentment, and there's a yearning they have to fulfill their potential. So my message is about the power of positivity, and it's very real. Positivity is not an abstraction, it's real, and it's something that we can really connect with. And that positivity is needed in both our thoughts and our emotions and in our lives, in terms of how we think, how we feel, how we act. We have to demonstrate that positivity to contribute to the world, to make it better. So I found that people were questing and very interested in their own spiritual path, but they often run into immediate obstacles in terms of, well, generally the first thing is my mind's too busy, I can't meditate. I feel too guilty, I feel too shameful, I feel too fearful, I feel overwhelmed by life, I feel overwhelmed by my experience, my traumas, all of those kinds of aspects that tend to saddle people can eclipse that essential motivation that they have to make more of themselves and to be a fleshed out character in their lives. So I felt like, okay, through the years, what have I learned? And I found that there's numerous strategies, and they're probably unlimited, but there's a lot of strategies that I'm drawing from tradition and emerging sciences. And I believe that if we have some tools to work with here, then it's not too difficult to for instance, work a path that relates to balance. You know, when I studied with my Native American teachers, there were lots of takeaways, but one of the main ones was recognizing that the power of intention, sincerity, and focus is it's an alchemical combination right there if you can combine the three of those.
And
So-
it's a lot, the
Yeah.
chemical reaction, the emotion, right? I feel, I don't know, when you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing, when you're making that intention and you're doing it, like, I don't know about you, but my heart center just blows up, man. You know, when I'm doing the podcast, when I'm having a great conversation, like with yourself right now, like I am just on fire,
Love
like
it.
in my chest, right? Like, I mean, that is
Beautiful.
heaven, right? Like that is God. That is the way. That is the
Fine. We're divine beings, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the direction you're supposed to be going.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It is the direction. You got it. I mean, I absolutely agree. It is the direction.
I mean, because a lot of people, like, they get frustrated. They don't, I don't know, man. Like, they just, like the law of attraction, man, right? Like the law of attraction, I think it's so misconstrued, like with, oh, put the vision board up. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get that, but you got to have the emotion behind it too. You can't just put a Lamborghini up there and be like, I want that. And then be like, why isn't it here 6 months later? It's like, it doesn't work like that, I don't think. Like, I feel like you got to have like intention of like, why do you really want this? You got to put in the work too, but you got to have like a real emotion tied to whatever it is to bring forth into your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, as far as the law of attraction,
I mean, maybe you want to call it the law of attraction, but like,
manifestation.
Yeah, manifestation.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think that it does have to be emotional as for anything we're wanting to create in life. Even
Do you believe that you can manifest? Like, can you so we've already created our reality, right? Like, so you and I have created this reality that we live in today. Can you change that reality? Like, once you become more awake to what it is that you want, can you change that to be what you want?
I think absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
absolutely. I believe.
How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, one thing that helps is transcending our story. You know, I mean, so many people, so many of us are identified with ourselves just as our story, and just as our, what I refer to in Expand Your Spiritual Bandwidth as being kind of plagued by the negative narrative. Okay. And the negative narrative is that kind of anti-hero voice that runs in real time in the back of our heads. And then more to the center of our hearts, we'll feel this positive, noble narrative that is spurring you on. And I think that that part of you believes in possibilities, and it believes that, sure, you wouldn't be given a desire if there wasn't at least some potentiality for it to be fulfilled. And I'm talking true desires, you know, deep desires. Not that there's anything wrong with frivolous desires either. It's just that we're more driven by what we really want, you know, not so much what we've been conditioned to believe we want or think we want. And our actions bear that out. So, you know, I believe that there's a transcendence in terms of, as I was saying a minute ago with the model with the Native Americans, there's intention and sincerity and focus. My model carries on a little bit beyond that, or actually just expands from there in terms of looking at mindfulness and integrating self-regulation in terms of the emotional life and the brainwave states and the states of consciousness, and also transcendence. And that's what you're getting to here, is we can transcend and have mystical experiences. So to the point though, as far as manifestation, the one thing that I see missing a lot for people is they hammer it. Like they use masculine energy, which is great. That's what we have, is that yang energy, and it's fantastic. But it needs to be balanced. See, just like everything in nature, it strikes a balance, just like all of the ancient Asian religious tradition suggests. So most people are picking up the hammer and they end up splitting the board instead of just driving the nail. And what I'm saying is you still have to aim for the nail, but there's a correct pressure. And there's a way we can get more ninja at this, where we can use just the right amount of energy and the right amount of focus and not go overboard. Now, with manifestation, the feminine energy should follow the intention and the emotionality, which is to say surrender. And that's where most people miss it. And I used to do it too, where you white knuckle it and you go, yeah, if I just think hard enough, if I just try to drive this thing. But nature doesn't work that way. It works in a balance. So the idea is you do everything you can, and then you have to be, I believe, satisfied with your efforts. You feel even greater fulfillment, more gratitude, more elevated emotions, and then you start to resonate with a stronger electromagnetic field, if you want to get into some of the science aspects of it, or just
we can get into that for sure.
Yeah, sure. So, we are electromagnetic fields, and that's proven by science as well. Is that's basically what the body is sure, it's cells and subatomic cells, but it's an electromagnetic construction or creation. Now that electromagnetic field can be strengthened by your degree of frequency, how fast it's moving, which is to say the energy that's moving through your body. So back to the point, and not to go too circular, but if we're going to drive an intention into, if we're going to drag a dream into existence, there has to be some element of surrender after all the effort.
Charlie, man, you're speaking some wise words here. I mean, I white knuckle the hell out of it. You know what I mean?
Well, most of us do, yeah. I mean, that's what it's great to have a voice of reason, and there's so many voices in this choir that are related to human potential that we're involved with, that are saying that, we don't see, white knuckling it at first is one thing, but there should be a learning curve where we start to learn how to do it without white knuckling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm interested in, is how can we get, we get over ourselves by going into ourselves.
Yeah. And like you were talking about, like that feminine quality of surrender, like it takes a lot of faith that the nature or the environment or the universe will like react to what you're doing, right? Like you're causing an action, you want a reaction, right? Like you want something to tell you that you're on the right path. There's not like a clear-cut sign. They say you're driving across country and you're going to come to California in X amount of miles and X amount of days and X amount of hours. But it's like when you're doing your dream, there is no sign, right? Like you just kind of, you just go along with the feeling, the emotion. Like if you know when you're doing the thing that you love, because you have that higher frequency. You're not going to see a road sign, I don't think, but you're going to feel where you need to go, right? And then if that's good enough for you, then you're living your dream. Now, some people want the monetary gain, they want the fame, they want all that. And to me, that isn't truly living your dream, because I feel like that's external, right? Like that's not living your, I don't know. Some people might disagree with that, but I feel like you were saying, like heaven is inside of us. And I feel like our dreams, if they are true to us, if they're truly what make us happy, then we should be content with, or not content, but happy and joyous with the actual action of doing that and following that feeling.
Right. I concur, Trey. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because if you're living your passion, if the interest ignites into a passion, then there's a kind of kinetic motion. I think of passion as the momentum of enthusiasm. So that momentum of enthusiasm it gathers heat, whether you want to look at it on a subatomic particle level or frequency level, or just an attitudinal level. How people who have great attitudes tend to do really well in life. And why don't people talk about that? So the idea is, yeah, absolutely. If we are driving towards our passion, then chances are the success is going to catch up with us. I think that it's kind of like, Joseph Campbell, one of our great minds of the 20th century, said that many people are climbing the ladder of success only to find out it's against the wrong wall. So that's what I don't want to do. And no problem with climbing any ladder to success. Just make sure it's against the wall that you really want to climb.
What about you? Like, are you climbing that ladder on the right wall? Like,
Well,
I mean,
yeah. In fact, that's what keeps me ticking. That's what keeps me juiced and inspired every day. I'm blessed with knowing that I'm here for this purpose and I'm identified with that purpose, and all of my energy goes towards that purpose. And so, yeah, it's very self-fulfilling, self-regulating. Absolutely. And I don't have to think about it. I'm just like a moth towards flame. I know that I love empowerment and I love empowering other people. And I love connecting with divinity and helping people understand that divinity is very organic. It's very natural. It's the smile. It's the happiness that you're born with. And there's degrees of mystical experiences that intrigue people, as they should. And that's kind of like an all or nothing attitude that many people feel like, oh, I have to be, the yogi that's levitating, or I'm just this guy that's trying to practice a half hour of meditation. But what I'm saying is, you have to start, you don't start at the top of the mountain. You start somewhere where you're finding peace and you're finding a perpetual sense of motion and purpose. And that is infectious, and it keeps building on itself. It's like you gain energy because you're loving what you're doing. Now, what happens is the rest of the world takes notice and says, wow, there's a person that's being authentic. In fact, one of the reasons I love the title of your show, Your Superior Self, is it reminds me of this Hemingway quote.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yes.
That quote, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the show's named after, is the Hemingway quote.
Yeah, there's nothing noble in feeling superior to your fellow man. That true nobility is in being superior to your former self, which I believe is kind of adapted from a Hindu proverb that Hemingway had tweaked a little bit. But that's the nature of all this great wisdom, is nobody has a monopoly on it. And we're all human beings, so we can all come into balance. Speaking of the other thing I learned from my Native American teachers, is about walking in balance. And what does that mean? So we have incredible potential intellectually. We have incredible potential emotionally. We have incredible potential spiritually. We're like a triangle of being. And when those three aspects align, you're going to go exponential. You're going to go quantum in terms of how you're able to affect the world around you. And mainly, you're causing an effect on reality because you're awake as a spirit and you're ignited, and which is to say you're in love with life. Now, if you're really in love with life, and if your love of life is greater than your fear of death, then you're onto something. So that's, in a nutshell, the energy of what happens when people start expanding their spiritual bandwidth. It means they're plugging into the potential that has always been there. And when many people approach for instance, the end of their lives, if they haven't found some peace and contentment, there's often this epiphany that happens where they realize, oh, here's my bucket list, or here's what I could have done, or what I wanted to experience, who I wanted to be. What I'm saying is, like, within us during the whole continuum of our incarnation, we can be plugging into the directives that point us constantly, like true north, towards what we really want. And it's really about that happiness. And it comes from within. If you're able to have that internal validation, the external validation, or the external success for that matter in the world, will just add to your ability to serve others. It's just going to be a platform of support. But if you don't have internal validation, there's never going to be enough external validation. And that's why, and not even on a materialistic level, people who die with the most toys don't necessarily win, because I know a lot of people that have just gone that route and they don't seem that happy.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of them.
Yeah, it's not the wealth's fault. It's not money's fault. It's missing the plot, And I feel like the plot is that we're here to experience and express love. Everything else is, fantastic around that.
Charley, this has been awesome. How can people connect with you? How can they reach out?
Sure, just through my website, charleycastex.com.
And what do you want your legacy to be?
No, that's a big question. I would like my legacy to be that I was able to provide inspiration, that I was able to provide some revelation, and that I was able to awaken people to the innate power of positivity and the inner power of connecting with a greater sense of life, a greater sense of enjoyment of their journey, of their experience.
Beautifully said. Charley, thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure, Charlie.
Oh, this has been awesome. Make sure you guys go out and get his book. This is seriously, I read 3 chapters and it was amazing. Well, the name of your book again so they can, where can they get it?
Sure. Expand Your Spiritual Bandwidth. And it'll be available on my website. It'll be available on Amazon and Kindle, ebook. Yep. Expand Your Spiritual Bandwidth. It's strategies for syncing spirit, mind, and body.
I want to say thank you to Charley for joining the show. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, for hanging out with me today. I hope this was an amazing conversation for you. I hope that you guys got something out of this. Go to traydowns.com. Let me know what you guys think. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Peace and love.